Hello everyone. As always, I'm happy to see you all join the event. I hope you're doing all right and that you and your families are safe. And it would be lovely if you guys could turn on your cameras to make this event even more interactive. Welcome to our Intro to Flutter hands-on experience event, which will let you learn about the technology itself and build an app. Roman is a Flutter expert and a speaker for us today, and he'll be leading this interactive session. We also have two other Google Developer Student Club leads. You might know Sardor already. Rasul and Sardor, they are both from Uzbekistan, and therefore our online audience combines members from two countries. Rasul is a Google Developer Student Club lead from Inha University in Tashkent, and he will join us in a moment, meaning that he will tune in with his camera on. And Sardor, please, could you introduce yourself briefly to the audience?
Yes, I'm Sardar. I've been a Google Student Club lead for the Turin Polytechnic University here in Tashkent in Uzbekistan, and also organizing events with the other Central Asia leads.
Okay, thank you. And now, Roman, please, could you tell us about yourself and what we should expect from today's session?
Great. Thank you so much for the invitation. And yes, such an exciting moment to be here. I am Roman Jaquez. I am a Flutter Google developer expert. I am also a lead organizer at GDG Lawrence here in my hometown in Methuen in Massachusetts in the United States. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. I've been a Flutter developer for like 2-3 years already. I made myself a Flutter developer a full-time because I was really passionate about it by bringing this technology into my company. I'm a software engineer by trade. I have almost like 10 years of experience. I've been doing web development a lot, desktop development, but then ever since I got into Flutter, I've fallen in love with it. It's such an amazing framework to get into, and now that it has so many potential, so many uses. So I'm really happy to be here, sharing the knowledge in Flutter with all of you guys. Again, I'm originally from Dominican Republic. My first language is Spanish, but I like to talk to many communities like you guys, Google Development Student Clubs, other GDG communities as well. I've been speaking in many events as well and giving these type of workshops because I love spreading the knowledge in Flutter and also sharing my tips and how to develop in Flutter so that you guys could also become great developers in this platform. So again, really happy to be here and thank you for the invitation again.
Thank you. And I should mention that, Roman, we really appreciate your contribution, cooperation. And as I said already, it made our communication very comfortable and efficient. And we thank you for agreeing to join and share your knowledge on Sunday morning in your case. So I think we may start the event.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing my screen. Let me see. I think it says disabling. I think I have not the ability to share my screen at this point. Just wait for. I just want to say welcome everybody. Meanwhile, and we're going to be doing again. Thank you again. So I'll be doing this interactive session. So I hope that people participate. Again, it's optional, but I love to bring people into the fold and bringing people into the experience. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and let me know if you guys can see it well.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Perfect. Great. So again, like I said, I am Roman Jaquez. I am a Flutter GDE. Welcome everybody to this Flutter hands-on workshop. So in this session, you're going to be coding in Flutter. It's not like you won't, you will be, and then you can follow along with very easy to follow codelabs that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. Some of the links are already in the chat, but I can drop them again. But you will have a very first hands-on experience in Flutter for those of you who haven't seen it, and then you will see the power of Flutter and learn how quick it is, and then in no time you can start creating very cool things. So these are some of my social media links for you to follow me if you want to follow along on some of the events that I've been doing. Not only this one, you can even attend some of the events that I've been doing throughout this month, I'll be doing a bunch of Flutter festivals that you can go in and you can connect. You can see me in action. Also, there's the Flutter, the YouTube channel that I have where I have a bunch of Flutter content in there that you can follow along. Also, I've been doing a couple of live streaming on Twitch, so you can follow me on Twitch as well. You can make fun of me making mistakes in Flutter and all that, and I love to share that experiences with people. So in my portfolio site where you can see other workshops, just like this one, where in a lot of Codelabs that you can follow along from beginner, intermediate, advanced, that you can continue your Flutter learning journey, and you can find it there. And last but not least, you can scan that QR code and you can follow me on Twitter @DrCoders, where I publish again, all the things that I've been working on Flutter. Like every week, I usually drop like, oh, look, I'm doing this cool thing. I'm building this game. I'm building these other things. And then I like to share with people. So I humbly ask you to follow me on Twitter if you guys would love to. Thank you. Yes, and like I mentioned, I want to make this session very interactive. So I would hope that you guys join me at slido.com with the code 635389. I will be asking questions from you. Just wanted to get the pulse on the audience. Just wanted to see where you guys are and just kind of keep it flowing, keep the communication flowing with you guys. And just want to get your reaction on a few things. So if you can join me at slido.com with the code 635389, and then I'll be asking questions. Again, it's totally optional, but I like to get your reaction, like I said. So one of the first questions that I like to ask folks when I hold these kind of sessions is like, from 1 through 5, like what's your level of coding expertise? Where are you in your development career? If you're just starting right now, of course, I would assume that you guys are learning, but how do you feel yourself? Like from 1 through 5, what do you consider your level of coding expertise? And it doesn't have to be in Flutter. It could be in anything. Are you doing Python? You're doing JavaScript, HTML? If you just scan the QR code and then you just drop me that, okay, perfect. I see people already reacting. Thank you. So from 1 through 5, I see that a lot of people are like in between, which is good. If you're, let's say in Flutter, if you've ever seen Flutter at all, maybe that's also good to know. But I see that now people range in between, in the spectrum, like, their level of coding expertise, which is amazing. I love the fact that, people not only are starting, they're maybe learning a lot, and they're maybe dabbling into multiple technologies. That's perfect. That's amazing. I love, and this is actually an indicator for me to see where you guys are, so I can tailor the experience exactly to you guys. So I love the fact that everybody has participated. Please keep bringing those those polls and those, ping me through the Slido. I love the interaction from the audience. So thank you very much for participating. So yes. So a quick quiz for you guys before we start as an icebreaker. So for you, which was the most downloaded app in 2021? Just take a guess. There's no right or wrong answers. We're just here to, collaborate as a community. I just wanted to get from people, like, which one do you think was the most downloaded app, like the mobile app in 2021, like last year? What do you think, which was the most downloaded app? I see that a lot of people say TikTok, and there's also WhatsApp, there's also Messenger, because people were trying to communicate, amid the global pandemic and then all the things going on. People wanted to stay communicated. So yes, correct. TikTok was the most downloaded app, not only because it was so viral, it went so viral, and it allowed people to communicate, but it also allowed people to express themselves in different ways so that people can stay connected. So TikTok was like the most downloaded app, pretty much. Now, this is just another guess. Which of the following well-known apps you think were developed in Flutter? Some people think that Flutter is just like for prototyping, or Flutter is just for like simple, small applications. But check this out. There's like eBay, BMW, the car manufacturer, Philips Hue, the company that I work for, Philips, or Capital One, which is like a banking application. How about like Groupon, which is like an e-commerce site? So which of the following applications was developed in Flutter? Which one do you think? Let's think. Let's see, all of them. So everybody was correct. All of these applications were developed in Flutter. You see how all these big players have actually taken a chance in Flutter. Think about like BMW, Philips Hue, Capital One, Groupon, eBay, all of them have taken a chance and adopted Flutter as their default framework for developing mobile applications. So why, if big companies like this, not you, would want to join Flutter? It's an amazing framework. It's very easy to learn. And you see, if big players like this do it, why not you? So thank you very much, everybody, for participating in this small quiz. So thank you very much. So if you're here, it's because you want to learn about Flutter. Flutter is Google's open source framework for developing beautiful interfaces natively compiled to target multiple platforms. You can build not only for mobile, embedded, you can build for desktop, you can build for the web. And I'm so pleased to announce that now you can build for like with the Windows platform. Like let's say if you want to become a Windows developer, you can do it with Flutter as well. With one single code base developed in the Dart programming language, you can learn Flutter very quickly, and you can publish to all those platforms with one single code base. Some people ask me, do you need to learn Dart before you learn Flutter? No, I did not know Dart at all. And then I learned Flutter as I was learning Dart. So Dart is the programming language, Flutter is the framework, and with that is that you publish those applications for all of those platforms. So today we're going to be learning Dart as we are doing a Flutter application, and at the same time you will be learning part of that as well. So I'm so pleased that you guys are here. And so open up your minds and let's start learning Flutter. So there are two ways on how to participate with this workshop. You either follow along with me. I will be coding this application following those code labs. It's actually 3 code labs, but in this session, we'll be completing one. You can complete the other 2 on your own, or if we see that we have a really good flow, we can even complete the first 2. But I'm giving you all those links. Let me just provide them again in here on the chat. Let me just drop it in the chat. And then you can have all those for example, this is number 1, this is Codelab number 1, this is the one that we're going to be doing right now, but then you can go to number 2 and number 3 as well. These are again follow-ups to this one if you want to complete it on your own, or if you want to go to my portfolio site, I have a bunch of other Codelabs that you can do on your own, and then you can see how cool it is to build like very natively compiled beautiful interfaces all in Flutter. This is the way to option number 1. The second option, I will be calling people like randomly. If you guys want to do this, I do this usually in other workshops where I call people randomly and I add them to my session in Visual Studio Code, and you help me code the same code labs. I just say, for example, I'll say, Asol, you want to jump on and help me out, and then she connects to my let's say to my session like that. And then anybody else from the audience, I can just call them up and say, hey, you want to connect to my Visual Studio Code, and then you can help me code. I call that coding roulette, and then I code people randomly, because this is how you learn Flutter. You learn Flutter by coding, you learn Flutter by building. So this is the best experience that you can do, that you can learn Flutter, is by building and doing stuff. So I hope that people just join later. I'll show you how to join later. Some guidelines before we begin. Let's try to be respectful with one another. Let's be modest. Let's also be open and collaborate with one another, because we are a community. So I hope that everybody participates, also ask questions, and yeah, ask me any questions and collaborate with one another. Like I said, we are a community. Let's try to be respectful with one another, because we all want to learn. Great. And then, like I said, at the end of this session, I will be raffling 2 Flutter development courses from Udemy. Again, just as a gratitude and as a token of my appreciation of you joining, I will be raffling 2 development courses from Udemy. I will be dropping the form. I believe I think I just added it, but I'm going to drop it again. This is the form. If you can just, let me just copy this link right here. If you want to get one of those one of those Udemy courses. I'll be raffling 2 Udemy courses. I just need your email and name so I can email it to you, and then you can continue on your Flutter learning journey also after this session. Okay, enough talking. I know that you're here to code, so let's do this. We're going to be using Dartpad. Dartpad is a web-based IDE for doing Flutter online. Like, you just do it on your browser. You don't have to install anything. Yes, of course, eventually you will have to install it on your machines if you want to deploy it on a physical device, but we're going to be using Dartpad, and Dartpad is a web-based Flutter IDE. Let me show you that. So you can visit dartpad.dev, and this is a Flutter IDE. Let me just drop the link here on the chat. If you go to dartpad.dev, you get to this IDE where you can do Flutter on your browser. So you don't have to install it, and then you can immediately start learning Flutter. And then let's start with the Codelab. So everybody, I would invite you to go to Codelab number 1, which is the link that I dropped in the chat. And Codelab number 1 should look like this. So what we will be building in today's session is a 3-page Flutter application. I call it like Mounts of the World, where we're going to be building a splash screen. We're going to be building like the landing page and then the details page of this Flutter application. If you don't know Flutter, don't worry. I'm going to be walking you through every single step on how to do this. So this is what we will be building today. So make sure that you have your Flutter Codelab maybe on one side of the screen. For example, like I'm going to move it here. And then I'm going to have my Dartpad session on the other side. And then that way you can or actually you can see it also. You can see me coding the application at the same time that I'm coding. So I am going to walk you through how to start Dartpad. At least go to dartpad.dev. I dropped the link in there. And then you should be presented with this IDE online, right? So this is what we're going to be building. Just move this over. So let me show you now what are the prerequisites. So the prerequisites are none. All you need to have is a browser and a solid internet connection, and you should be good. So let's proceed. So this is how you launch Dartpad. Like I said, you go to dartpad.dev, and then you're presented with the IDE. At the top of the IDE here on the, you see on the left-hand side, actually, let me zoom out a little. At the top of Dartpad, there is a button that says New Pad. You click where it says New Pad, as in the instructions in the Codelab. You click where it says New Pad, and then you say Create New Pad. You either click on Dart or Flutter. We're going to be doing Flutter today, so you select Flutter. So you click again. Let me do it again. Click New Pad. You click on Flutter. You click then Create. When you click on Create, then you get some like boilerplate code that it gives you. There is a Run button up here, which kind of simulates you running your application like in Visual Studio Code, for example. And then when you hit Run, here on the right-hand side is a preview of what we will be coding on the left-hand side. So we will be coding on the left-hand side, and we will be previewing it on the right-hand side. So if you follow the step number 2 in the Codelab, I walk you through how to launch Dartpad, and then you see that you also get the hello world. So is everybody there with Dartpad? Do you have Dartpad open and you have created it? Great. I can take a nod from you guys. Perfect. So let's continue. Now I'm going to step number 4, where we're going to start building our Flutter application. So what we're going to be building, what we're going to start is on building a splash screen. Some of you guys have seen in applications, you see like a splash screen. So a splash screen is just like the main screen that it shows on your application. So that's how we're going to be building it. So the first thing that you need on a Flutter application is importing the library that you're going to be using. In our case, we'll be using the material library for building this application. I will ask you on the left side on Dartpad to delete everything. Just go like this, Control A, and delete everything. We're going to be starting from scratch. So we will be completely starting from the beginning, from scratch. Delete everything on Dartpad because we're going to be starting from the beginning. So that way you know how a Flutter application starts from the first line of code. Great. So I am in step number 4 already. And if you keep scrolling down on step number 4, this is the first thing that you need to add in your application. So the first thing that you need is the import statement, which I will have you copy from the Codelab. You can just copy and paste it. The first statement is importing the material library. That's the first line of code. The next line of code is actually the main method. The main method is the most important method in a Flutter application because it bootstraps the application. It launches the application. So everybody, please, I invite you to type void main, and then you write that method, or you can copy it like the way I provided in the Codelab. You just write the main method. So every Flutter application has a main method. It's the most important method. Now, if you continue down the line, we need to add the first widget in our application. Flutter works as, everything in Flutter is a widget, even the application itself. So think about that. Everything in Flutter is a widget. In a widget, it's nothing more than like a component. It's a single unit of functionality that the minimum function of the minimum unit of functionality that you can have in an application. And then you build your application by nesting widgets inside widgets until you build a hierarchy. So the next thing that we were going to be adding is a run app method. Run app, and I've already provided code. You can even copy it, but I'm going to type it. So the run app method is a method provided by the Flutter framework to load the first widget, which is the root widget in your hierarchy. Imagine a Flutter application like a tree, like a Flutter widget tree. The first one is the root, so we need to add that root, and in this case is the material app. The material app is like the top widget in your application. So let's just type it. You can copy it from the Codelab, but I'm going to type it so that you can see it. So I do material app. Material app is the first widget, like the root widget, and then inside you add other things. You add, for example, this property called debug show checked mode banner. All this is doing is just there is like a small flag, like a debug flag on the right corner of your window. You want to get rid of that debug flag because we're going to be not in debug mode. So you just turn it off. And then the most important thing on the root widget is loading the first widget that you're going to be showing to your users, which is the home. So you type home and then you create the first widget. The first widget will be the splash page. So you just type splash page. Don't worry that it doesn't exist yet, that you will see like a red line in here. That means because the widget doesn't exist yet. So let me recap. So you have a void main method, which is the most important method on the Flutter application. The run app, which is the method run by the framework to load the first widget. We have our material app widget, which is the root widget. And then we have the home. We are going to be loading the first widget at the root. Like under the root, we need to display something to the users. It will be the splash page. So splash page will be the first widget that we will create on our own. You want to create a new widget? How do you create a widget in Flutter? You have to create a class that extends either stateful or stateless. So now that we've completed this step, let's all go to the next step. You just click next on your Codelab. We are now on step number 5. So step number 5 is creating the splash page widget. It's not created. So every time you create a new widget, you have to create a class that extends either stateful or stateless. Stateful means that you're going to preserve the state of your application in between widget rebuilds. Stateless means just render it for me. Just show it to me on the screen. I don't want to contain anything, that will change any state. I don't want to persist any state on my application. I just want to paint it on the screen. Just show me something. You create a stateless widget. When you do stateful widget, it's because you're going to change things. You're going to do like a button click. You want some text to change. You want to change something. That's a stateful because it maintains a state and then it changes over time. So in our case, we're going to be creating a splash page widget. So please follow me on step number 5, where we will be creating our first class. So you type class splash page extends stateless widget. When you create a class like this, you're creating your own widget, like you're building your own custom widget. Now, when you give this widget to Flutter to paint it on your screen, you need to override one main method, one specific method called the build method. Remember before I said the main method is the most important method on the Flutter application? Well, the build method is the most important method on a widget, because when you give it to Flutter, you're telling Flutter, please paint this widget on the screen because this is a custom widget that I'm giving you. So inside of the build method is where you build your whole widget. So now you type override, right? And then you override the build method. So you return widget, build, and then you pass the build context into this method. And then I'll explain what the build context is. So the build context is an object. It's kind of like a reference to where your widget is in the whole widget tree. As you're building widgets in your application, you need to know where they are in the hierarchy as you build it. And then with this context, you can actually know, you can access parent information, you can get information about the system, you can know where the location of that widget in the widget tree is. You can get a lot of things from the context. So it's very important that when you override the build method, you get the build context. And then inside of the build method is where you build your whole application. Like this widget is just going to show like an image, so you put it inside of the build method because that is what gets executed by Flutter. Okay. So I also provide here like final static methods and static properties that you need throughout your application. So you can just copy this property called final color main color. All I'm doing here is just creating a global variable so I can use it throughout my application so that we don't have to repeat this color all over again. So I'm going to copy that, and you can just paste it anywhere at the top of the Dartpad. And then you can use this color anywhere. Now let's continue with the application. So we left it off at the build method. So inside of the build method is where you build your widget tree, and you have to return widgets. The first widget that I will add in the build method is a container. A container, for those of you who know like HTML, it's like a div. So it's like a container. It's like you can contain other things in it. It's very versatile because you can do like borders, you can do like round corners, you can use it for like background images and a bunch of things. Does anybody have any questions? We're all good? Okay, let's proceed. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's continue. And inside of the build method, then you return widgets. So everything is a widget in Flutter, so you have to do widgets. So I do return container. So if I'm saying I'm going to return a container, that means my Flutter is going to build a container for me. Now inside of that container, I'm going to assign a color to this container. How do you do that? Just type color and just give it the property that we set up here, which is called main color. So what we're doing here is I'm just going to creating a widget that has a color and just shows it on the screen. Let's see what that looks like. So when I created this, I hope that everybody's following along. If you're at this point, you should be seeing just a square with a like a pinkish color like this. So even with this, we're making great progress because we've already created our first widget. We override the build method, and we're returning a container. So that is how you do it in Flutter. You build stuff like that. You create a build method, and then you start building your hierarchy. Let's continue down the line. Let's create now, let's keep building the structure. Remember I mentioned that in Flutter, you nest widgets inside other widgets, and that's how you build a structure. So some widgets have a child, and some other widgets have children. In this case, a container only takes one child, like only one widget inside of it. But other widgets can take more than one, so they can take children's of widget. In this case, we're going to be adding another widget as a child of the container. You just do comma, and then you add the next property called child. Child, then you have to add another widget inside of it. The next widget that we're adding is called a stack. A stack widget is a widget that can lay your widgets one on top of each other like a pancake, like in layers, right? So you do a stack, and then when you add the widgets, they add one on top of each other like that. So you do child, stack, and then a stack can take children, like I mentioned earlier. So you just say children, and then you add an array because you're going to be adding more than one child inside of the stack, okay? So now we should have a container widget, then inside we have a stack, and then inside of the stack, we add other widgets. That's how you build things in Flutter. In Flutter also, because everything is a widget, even positional and layout components are widgets, like aligned, center, padding, all those are widgets. Also things like, position, all those are widgets, not just like image, text, button. Yes, those are the usual things that you might think those are widgets, but everything in Flutter is a widget. So even aligning. So what we're going to be doing is aligning one icon in the middle of the screen. So the way that you do, so we have the stack, we have the container, then the container has the stack. Now inside of the stack, we will align something in the middle of that stack. So you type align, and then inside of the align, you provide the alignment property, alignment, and then you say alignment dot center, which means we're going to align anything that we add inside of the align widget is going to be aligned to the center, pretty much. And then remember, some widgets take a child, some widgets take children. This one takes a child, and then as a child, we're going to be adding another type of icon, another type of widget, an icon widget. So an icon widget just gives you an icon, very simple. You just type icon, and then you give it the name of the icon. And then you say icons.terrain, for example, like this. And let me show you, Flutter, or actually Google itself, gives you these number of icons and fonts for free. So you can access the whole material library of icons that you can use for free inside of Flutter. This is actually what I'm using. You don't have to install anything. It is part of Flutter because they give you all this vast array of icons that you can use in your application. And these are vector-based icons that you can use for free. You don't have to pay anything, and you can use it in your application. So here I'm using one icon called terrain, like this one. I think, yeah, it looks like a little mountain like this. You see, like this is the icon that I'm using. So I'm going to say terrain. Now give it a color to my widget. I'm going to say, give it a color of white, and also give it a size so it looks a little decent. So I'll do size 90, like 90 pixels wide, and like 90 pixels in dimension, like this. So let me recap again. So you see, we created a stack. Inside of the stack, we added a widget, an align widget. Now that means that icon widget that I aligned to the center will be aligned at the center of the screen. So now if I hit run, I should be able to see an icon in the middle of my screen, white with the little mountain. So let's see. And then you see that sometimes you get like this blue line. That's okay. That is just Flutter telling you you want to create it as a constant widget, but you don't have to worry about that because it's not breaking your code. That's just like a warning. But you see, now we're able to show a container with a color, an icon in the middle. Now let's continue adding other widgets. So now the next widget that we will be adding, which I'm already providing for you here, you can just copy paste it, is another widget. that I will be aligning inside of the stack. I will be aligning it to the bottom center of the widget, of the stack. Look, so it says bottom center. So because all the widgets are in the stack are aligned like this, I will align this at the bottom center. But you can just copy this align widget, which is aligning another type of widget called circular progress indicator. So you can just copy that align widget, make sure that you put it right under the icon like this. You can also use, for those Mac users, you can do Shift Tab to like tab, or you can just tab to kind of like format your widgets here. And then you can see that it says align. This is the align icon. And then right underneath it, make sure that you add a comma, right? You add a comma, and then you add the next align widget, which is align at the bottom center, and it's aligning a circular progress indicator. That is another type of widget that just gives you a little spinning wheel to kind of illustrate that something is going on. So we're like creating, like faking that we're making a call to like an API or something like that. So after this, now let's try to run our application. And then let's see. Now we should be able to see the splash screen with the icon in the middle, and you will see like a spinning wheel at the bottom. So you will see that white spinning wheel. That is the circular progress indicator. So we just add it right underneath it. Perfect. Let's continue right along. And then here we already showed the progress indicator, which is pretty cool. It's aligned at the bottom, but you see that it's a little bit tighter. It's a little bit tight at the bottom. You kind of want to add like some spacing in there. You can add spaces in multiple ways, but I want to show you one way that you can add like some margins around the, like your circular progress indicator. It's very simple. You can grab like the circular progress indicator, the way that I'm doing, you just highlight it like this, and you can like cut it. And then you add container around the circular progress indicator. Like I'm showing in Codelab, you can add a container, right? And then remember, a container takes a child. So then you add the circular progress indicator as the child of the container, like this. Make sure that that you're doing your the proper indentation so that you don't mess up your structure. And then inside of the container has a property called margin. So you can use a container to wrap another widget, and you can give it padding, you can give it margin, you can do anything. In this case, I'll do margin, and you can do margins in Flutter using something called edge insets. So you can say edge insets dot only, and then I'm saying just only add a margin at the bottom of this circular progress indicator and make it just at the bottom with 80 pixels like this. So you see, the way that you do Flutter is you type all these structures. This is called declarative programming, because you're declaring how you want your user interface to look like. So you build this whole configuration, this whole structure, this widget, and then you give it to Flutter. Flutter builds it, and then it shows it to you. So this is called declarative programming. Now, if we hit run, you see that there's no borders or margins around our circular progress indicator. Now, when you hit run, you will see now that there's a little bit of margin around it. There you go. So now there's 80 pixels. You should have 80 pixels of margin right underneath your widget. Awesome. Great. So we're making great progress here. That's amazing. Now check this out. When we scroll down, and then I hope that you're following along. Remember, we are on step number 5. If you're at the bottom of step number 5, where we already added 2 widgets, we added a container widget, our stack widget, and then the 2 widgets inside of the stack, you should be at this point. So now we have a functional splash screen, but what we need is the splash screen to take a few seconds and then takes us somewhere else, because otherwise there's no point in just staring at this screen, because it's not doing anything. We need to go somewhere. So now we're going to be showing you a little bit of like how you do navigation in Flutter. So I'm going to be hitting next. And now we all should be on step number 6, which is creating just a landing page. In Flutter, remember, everything is a widget. We just built a page. We created like a little widget, like an icon widget. Then we created the circular progress indicator widget. We added the container widget. But you see, even the smallest things are widget, but big things like a page could also be widgets. So you call everything a widget. That's what's cool. So now we're going to be creating a dummy landing page. Now you should be experts in creating widgets. So now I've already provided this code so that you can see how you can build another widget for this application. So we are in step number 6. Sorry about that. So we're in step number 6, where now you see how I create another widget, which is going to be the next page where we're going to navigate to. So I would love for you to accompany me on step number 6. You scroll all the way on step number 6, and you see here the code for creating the next widget, which is another page. So let me copy that.
Roman, please, may I interrupt you just for a while, just for a moment? Could you please copy and paste the splash page class, because it just contains images on your Codelab, and so it's not really possible to copy it. And I just got a little bit confused because of indentation. Yeah.
Perfect, because the indentation may be messing you up. You can also, when you go at the end on the step number, at the end of the, in step number 10, you can grab the code from there, which might be easier for you. If those of you may be confused with the indentation, you can go all the way to step number 10, where the whole code is in there. So you can copy the splash screen like this. And then you can just copy, and bring, thank you, Asol, for that observation. So you can just copy and paste it here, just so that you can see. So it's exactly the same code. But if you copy it, it's because I can copy the one that I have, just because the complete code may have maybe a couple of other additional things, which is okay. But I'm going to, let me just do this piece right here. And will it take, let me see if it doesn't mess up the code. If I drop it in the chat, let me see if I can do that. Oh, okay, perfect. So there you go. So you can copy it from the chat, guys. But without, let me do it again, because I already copied some additional code that I still don't need you guys to copy it, because we're gonna go to that step. So apologies for that. Let me paste it again. Perfect. So that is the whole splash page widget that I want you to copy. Perfect. And thank you for that observation. Let me go back to where we were on step number 6. So you should have the splash page code already pasted into Dartpad. And then in Dartpad, you see that you have the 2 widgets, right? And then you should see this thing like spinning all the time. Now I have the code for the next widget, which is the MountsApp, which is the stateless widget. It's a stateless widget, and that's going to be representing the next page where we're going to. Okay, so anywhere within within Dartpad, you can just hit enter and just make like a little bit of space. And at the end of step number 6, I have the class for the next page. So I'm going to copy and paste it there. And you see that there's another class just called MountsApp. It also extends stateless widget. I also override the build method. Remember, every custom widget has to override the build method. And then inside of the build method, I have another widget called the scaffold. The scaffold widget is one of the most important widgets when you're building like a page widget, because it gives you like a header, it gives you a bottom bar, it gives you the ability to add like a menu, it gives you like a floating button, but most importantly, it gives you a body. Inside of the body is where then you're going to be adding most of the things in your page, like the bodies, like, you know, the body of the page. So please copy paste the MountsApp stateless widget into your code. And now let's continue building this application. So once you have the MountsApp widget in there, now let's proceed to the next page. And another observation, the reason why I'm adding like the screenshots so you don't copy paste it, it's actually on purpose. So I'm giving you some code to copy, but then the other code is so that you can type it to force you to learn Flutter. Because Flutter, when you type it like manually, you build your knowledge in Flutter and you build that Flutter muscle. Because I've been to a bunch of other code labs where you only copy paste it and you don't type anything. And then at the end of the collab, you're like, yes, I just copy pasted a bunch of things and I didn't learn anything. But here, at least I'm giving you a mixture. So I give you some copy pasting and some hand coding so that you get familiar with typing. But yes, I'm here also to help you and not to confuse you, of course. So that's why I wanted to do like that hybrid approach. So let's continue. So now in step number 7, we're going to be introducing something called a future. For those of you who know maybe JavaScript or maybe other programming languages where you do like asynchronous programming, something that happens in response to another action, but it doesn't in parallel with the execution of the application. So a future is an object that represents an action to be executed in the future. So what this means is, what we want to do is, let's do while the spinning wheel is running, we want to do something. We want to introduce a little delay. We won't want to freeze the user interface. We don't want to freeze the UI. All we want to do is introduce a little delay, like faking that we're making a call, and then we perform something. So that is called a future. So a future is an object that represents an operation to be executed in the future. So that's what it means, like a future. So wait 2 minutes, wait 2 seconds, and then do something. That is what we're going to be doing. So let's go back to the splash page. So we're up here on the splash page. And then inside of the build method, right here, inside of the build method, you're going to be adding a future. And then future has a method called delayed. So I also provided the code in there. So you can even copy it. I'm also going to be doing the same thing. So just copy that and let me explain what that means. You have to copy this inside of the build method, because when you give this widget to Flutter and then Flutter executes it, as it's building your widget, it's going to wait 2 seconds and then it's going to perform something after 2 seconds. So when you paste it, what we're doing here is the following. We're saying Flutter, wait for 2 seconds. Let's introduce a delay, wait for 2 seconds, and then you give it a method. So you give it like a callback, like a little anonymous method. So you're saying after the 2 seconds, please call this method for me, and then you do something. What is that something? We're going to be using the navigator. Navigator is this utility in Flutter that allows you to navigate to other pages. In Flutter, the navigator is this utility that allows you to stack pages one on top of each other. That is like a navigator. So when you hear the term navigator stack, is because the widget pages are stacked one on top of each other, and the topmost page is what you see. Other pages are like behind it. So it's like a stack. It's like a top level view of a stack. So the pages get stacked on top of each other. So what we're doing here is we're calling the navigator using the context. Remember that context I told you is very important to get information from the system, to get utilities from the system. In this case, we're getting the navigator. So you get the navigator and then you push a route to the navigator stack. So when you push this material page route, which is the route, so you're pushing a route to the navigator, then you have to give it this builder method, which does nothing than just returning that page that we created earlier. So let me recap it again. You wait 2 seconds, you invoke the navigator stack, the navigator utility, and then you push a page to it. It's like pushing something inside of the stack. You have the splash, and then you push another screen in front of it. And then for that, you use something called a route, and then you use a class material page route. And then this builder builds your page and then inserts it into the navigator stack. That's what it's doing. So now let's all run this application. You don't even have to save it because it gets saved for you. So let's click run. And then when you click run, now you will see the splash screen, wait for 2 little seconds, and then it's gonna take you to the next page. And then you see it. Now, let me run it again. You will see the splash screen for 2 seconds, and then you get navigated to the next page, which is the MountsApp page. Is anybody there? Oh, I see some questions in the chat. Will the widget size change depending on the phone screen? Yes, you can change depending on the phone screen, and you can also introduce something called responsive design. And Flutter has even that capability. You know, for maybe you know HTML or CSS, you know, like media queries. Media queries are the capability for you to add responsiveness to your user interface to make it flexible so that it stretches with the size of the screen. That is correct. So that's why you can build this for, let's say, like a big screen. You see, like the screen resizes accordingly, and then it resizes based on the screen. Let's say you can build it for a tablet, you can build it for a TV, you can build it for Windows, for a desktop, for the web, for embedded, anything. So you can just build this with that responsiveness in mind. So yes, you can definitely the UI changes and the widgets change also depending on the size of the screen. So let me just run it again, and then you see it, and you should be able to see the splash screen show one more time, and then it navigates to the next page. Is anybody else not in there? Are you seeing the splash screen and then navigate to the next page? Just maybe a little thumbs up or a nod from you guys. Perfect. Awesome. So with that, we've completed already the first Codelab. So congratulations to you. You've already been exposed to Flutter. This is just a very basic introduction to Flutter so that you can see how you get familiar with Flutter, make sure, so that you understand how widgets work, how you nest widgets inside of each other, how you perform a navigation from one page to another, how you know that the main method is the most important method in a Flutter application, and how the build method is the most important method inside a widget. Great. We have another one. Could you please tell a little more about context? Great. So let me explain again about the context. So you see that the context was used in 2 places. Every time we create a widget, like let's say the splash page or the MountsApp, you get the build context. And then we use the build context to give it to the navigator right here. So the context is given to you by Flutter so that you can go up on the widget tree and find things. You can find like services. You can find utilities like the navigator. You can actually access even the theme of the application. You can even access how wide the screen is. You need to know that. So every widget has this context so that you can query that information. For example, let me show you. Like someone asked about the size of the screen. If you want to know the size of your screen, you do this. Look, you say media query dot of, you give it the context, and just by doing this, you're using media query, you're going up the widget tree, and then you can do dot size dot width. This is giving you the width of the screen. If you say size dot height, you can get the height of the screen. But you see, you use the context to actually get that from the system. Another thing that you can get with the context, like I showed you, was the navigator. So it gives you the navigator so that you can ask like okay, let me insert a page inside of the navigator stack. So with the context, you can get a lot of things from Flutter. Another thing that you can get from Flutter is the theme. So you can say theme dot of, you give it the context, and then now you can get what the theme is of the application. Let's say if your theme is the dark theme or the light theme, you can just come over here and you look, it says app bar theme. You can get the text theme. You can get the text button theme. You can get a lot of things with the context. That's why the context is given to every widget. The context is also used so that you can ask for, let's say, you want to check the orientation of the screen, you can do all of that through the context. So imagine the context being like a pointer or something that you can use to query, to ask things from Flutter. Flutter, give me the size of the screen. Flutter, give me the theme. Give me the navigator. You use the context. In the future, you will also learn how to consume doing something like called state management in Flutter, which is a way to decouple like the business logic of your application from the rendering logic. And then you can ask for like a web service. You can ask for like a class that has all the business logic. You can use the context for that. So the context is very important in Flutter, and then it's given to you so that you can ask things from Flutter. Very good question. Another question is, do FANG companies hire Flutter developers? Yes, they do, of course. Even Flutter itself, like the Google, Google itself, they hire Flutter developers because they do build Flutter applications themselves internally. In other companies, they do want to expand their ecosystem of applications, and they want to develop like SDKs and libraries to cater all developers, and especially like Flutter. You can build like a bunch of companies build like Flutter SDKs and Flutter libraries, so they want to foster that community because it's growing a lot. So of course they do. Another one is like, so content is something that has info about the system and app state in general. Yes, that's exactly what it is. If you put it in simpler terms, context is just something that you use to query your system. From inside of your Flutter widget, from your widget, you want to ask for things. You're inside. You want to ask for things outside. You want to know who your immediate parent is. You use the context. You want to insert something into the Flutter navigator stack. You grab the context. You want to get the theme. You grab the context. Just like that. Thank you for the question. How much Flutter's performance different from native? Actually, Flutter builds to native. The only thing is, when you build native, you only don't build from Dart to native code, because you're immediately doing to native code. The difference between Flutter and, let's say, other frameworks like React. For example, React, what React does is that it has a JavaScript bridge. So you type it in JavaScript and in HTML, you go through a JavaScript bridge, which compiles your code then to the native code, right? And then it acts as the underlying infrastructure. Flutter, what it does, it builds straight into native code without doing any bridges. So that is great about Flutter, that it builds directly into native code, but using Dart. So with Dart, it uses the Dart virtual machine so that then it builds directly into native. That's why Flutter is considered even better performant than React Native or like NativeScript or Xamarin, some of those that do actually use like a bridge in between. So yes, it's close to native, not like of course as performant as native, but it's very close, and it does actually 60 frames per second. Sometimes 120 frames per second when you have like high-end devices. So yes, I definitely recommend using Flutter, even for like games, because I've built games in Flutter, and it's pretty cool. So you can actually get like very close to native performance in Flutter. Another question: what do you think that you think that Fuchsia OS can replace Android in the following years? Android will be there, not only to support, let's say, legacy applications, but Fuchsia is supposed to be like the future OS that then it will be ubiquitous in all, let's say, in all devices. Because Fuchsia, for those of you who don't know, Fuchsia is like that next generation operating system that currently is running inside of like the Google Home devices. And then eventually they want to deploy like on TVs, on phones, of course. But what I've heard from Google itself is that Fuchsia has some utilities, Android has some utilities. They still want to make them like coexist. I would wish that Fuchsia replaces everything. That way you have one OS for all devices. That way you can truly accomplish what they call ambience computing, which means if you have one application on your phone, then you want that same application to continue running on your TV. Then let's say you want it to be on your desktop, then on your, your toaster, and so on. So that's cold ambience computers, and Fuchsia is supposed to be doing that. I would say it's still a couple of years ahead before maybe Android is replaced, but Fuchsia provides a very good, compelling case for being like an ubiquitous operating system. So I love the questions that you guys are dropping. Thank you so much for dropping all those questions. So yes, we can continue with the Colab. I hope that everybody is following along. Of course, we won't be able to complete the 3 Colabs because this is supposed to be a very introductory session on Flutter, so that you guys can ask me questions. You can play a little bit with the Colabs. You can continue doing these Colabs on your own, of course, and follow your Flutter journey. Another question: do you think that it is better to learn how to build native apps and then cross-platform, or the other doesn't really matter? Okay, amazing question. When you build, let's say, cross-platform applications, it's because you want to save time in, let's say, targeting multiple frameworks. Let's say you want to do multiple platforms. Let's say you want to do Android and iOS and then web, and then this application I want to get to market, the sooner the better. Flutter is a very great case for doing that. You use Flutter and then you publish to those 3 platforms. But let's say Flutter at the moment may not be the best case. Let's say if you have something very specific that is only available for that platform. Let's say if Flutter right now doesn't have anything or specific library or specific implementation that is not supported, that is only available to your specific platform, then go ahead and do it only in that platform. But right now, Flutter presents a very compelling case that every day new libraries come in, a lot of updates are provided, so that now you don't have to even do it in that particular, let's say, specific platform, let's say on iOS, because now Flutter can do those iOS. Let's say if you want to do like the access the camera, access like Bluetooth, and like complex stuff like that, Flutter can do that. If let's say if your company already has developers in iOS, okay, go ahead and do it in iOS. But let's say if you don't want to hire an Android developer, but you already have an iOS developer, you don't want to have like two, 3 teams, you can just like train your team in Flutter, and then they can target those multiple frameworks. If you're starting right now developing mobile applications, my suggestion to you, you can start with Flutter, because it's still learning Flutter. You have to know a little bit of Android, you have to know a little bit of iOS, because eventually you have to touch Xcode or you have to touch Android Studio, because Flutter gives you this, it makes it transparent for you to interact with the underlying frameworks, but you still need to know a little bit of those. But to me, as an advice to you, start with Flutter. That way you save time in publishing to these multiple platforms, but you still need to learn a little bit of the underlying platforms, which doesn't hurt. Thank you for the question. What's better to learn, Redux or Block? Some people ask me about like the way to use like the state management. There's no right or wrong state management. It's what applies to your application. I have published applications using the block pattern. I've published applications doing the provider pattern. It all depends on how complex your application is. I could say Redux, it may be too complex for like a small application. If you have a big application, maybe Redux could apply. The block pattern is good for like medium to even large applications. But I myself, I can tell you, I have used the provider pattern to do state management in even large applications, and it has not crashed on anybody, and it hasn't been rejected. So again, it's all a matter of how you feel comfortable with, what your team is comfortable with. But I would recommend whatever makes sense to you, what makes you productive, and what your team likes. You don't want to be like someone in your team, oh yeah, I want to do the block and I'm right and everybody's wrong. No, let's find what's better for the application, what's better for all of us, and then you make some compromises. In my case, I've used the block pattern, I've used the provider pattern, and all of them are great, but you pick something that makes sense for your application, for your team, and for you. Don't go by like, because a friend of you tells you, use the block, then you destroy your application and then do the block. Don't go by hype. Go by what you're building, what your application, what makes sense for your application. Amazing questions, guys. Keep dropping the questions. Something else, when I said something else, then I mentioned then the provider state management. I use that a lot because it's simple, and then I show people how even something simple can be used to build robust things. Like right now I'm building like a social media app, and yeah, I can say much about it, but I'm using the provider panel. So you see, just because it's simple doesn't mean you can build complex stuff with it. It's just that I like to make my life easier. Great. Yes, and yeah, perfect. Could you mean that Apple never needs hired Flutter developers? Because as I understand, Apple publishes apps only on Apple products. Not precisely. Not precisely. Because an Apple developer like Apple can hire Flutter so that they can show that Flutter can coexist, let's say in the app store. Also, Apple, for example, like, yeah, they can hire can you imagine if Apple only hires only like Apple people? I know Apple that they hire web developers. They also hire Android developers because they want to play nice with other providers and other things. You know that in let's say in Android, you can actually sign with your Apple account. So Apple, like Android developers need to be hired by Apple so that Apple knows how to interact with, let's say, Android developers, and they can cater to them like for services and whatnot. So it's not that you need to know Apple stuff to be hired by Apple. You need to know Facebook stuff to be hired by Facebook, or like in Google. Like Google, I know people that you hire Apple developers in Google. Google hires Apple developers so that we build stuff like this, like Flutter. You can build like Flutter applications for Apple as a Google developer in Google. So you see, they don't just hire people with only one type of knowledge that only caters their company. They want to play nice with the developer ecosystem. They want to, be nice with everybody so that they can have a broader audience and bring more developers into the ecosystem. But yeah, pretty much that's kind of like how it plays out right now in the field. So don't fret if you want to get hired by any of the FANG companies. Yeah, don't say, oh, I only have to have a Mac, or you can have a Windows machine and be hired by Apple, because they want to maybe cater the Windows users, and they need to create services and applications for them as well. So don't fret. You just be passionate about what you do. The passion for coding and love coding, and then you can build like a lot of cool things. Great. Please, more questions, guys. I love all the questions that you guys are dropping at me. If you don't have any more questions, at least I just want to show you a couple of things. Okay, great. So which tips could you advise for a beginner after completing a course to gain some experience? My experience, I even have a session in my YouTube channel about like the 10 tips for how to learn Flutter and how to be productive in Flutter. So tip number one is pretty much learning, for example, like the inner workings of Flutter. The best thing to do in Flutter is to build things. Start small and just build stuff as you go. Don't think that you're gonna have, in order for you to become a Flutter developer, you have to build an application like Twitter, like Facebook, like big applications. No. Don't always also think that you have to build something really big to publish it, or that you have to be, or something is already created out there. Just build something small, put it out there, get feedback, and then you iterate over that. There's a bunch of great tutorials. Don't just spend your time like watching a bunch of videos or just reading a bunch of books. You have to build, like exactly the way that I created these codelabs, where I'm forcing you how to type, Flutter. I'm forcing you to learn Flutter. So the way to learn Flutter is by building, even something small, and then you learn over by that. Also, you can go to events like this. Of course, you interact with other developers, and then that's how you mostly learn. But don't just spend your time just watching a bunch of videos and not coding. You have to code. You have to build stuff, even as small as you might think like, oh, this application is already created. No, but you can give it your own flavor, and you can give it your own style. But build stuff. That is the main key for that. Have you studied CS in college or self-taught developer? I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, but I have colleagues who don't have a computer science degree or a math degree and are self-taught developers. Like I know people who start from scratch and have become even Flutter developers and have been hired by big companies. Like at my company, we have people who don't have a computer science degree and are developers, very successful developers, because they're passionate about what they do, because they build a lot of things, and not because of a good resume, because of a good, maybe a GitHub repo, or because a good portfolio. Like my portfolio, like I have a bunch of apps that I've built, and just because I have that and they've shown us like experience, you don't need a computer science degree. You just need to show willingness to learn, that you have a good portfolio, that you've built stuff, and that's enough to get hired in today's economy, in today's industry. So definitely, yes. Which language did you use before Flutter? Great question. So before Flutter, yes, I used to have 3 code bases. I used to do my main programming language is JavaScript. So I used to be like only doing web. I used to do like Angular and a bunch of like web applications. So after Angular, then I became an iOS developer. So I learned Objective-C and Swift. Then I wanted to build Android applications. Then I learned Java. So it's been over a span of like 10 years. So then after I was doing like also C# because I was doing Windows Phone applications. So I was building, I had in my 3 screens, I have 3 screens right now. I used to have Xcode on one screen, Android Studio on another screen, Visual Studio on another screen. And I used to build the code 3 times. Can you imagine that? Then after I found Flutter, I'm like, wow, with just one single code base, I'm able to target Windows, web, Android, iOS, even embedded. I've even built stuff for like a Raspberry Pi, loading, running like an Ubuntu. So I've even done like applications for like embedded devices using Flutter, believe it or not. So even embedded, like embedded applications, you can even do that. Is there any way to reduce the size of a Flutter app? Unfortunately, at the moment, the only way that you can do, for example, like Flutter, of course, because it has the like a minified Dart virtual machine internally, is still a little bit bloated. So it's still a little bigger than like the counterparts, like the native counterparts. So they are still improving on that. Like every release, they are improving on how they minified the Flutter package. Still at the moment, the only way that you could do it is just make sure that your code is sufficient enough so that it doesn't bring multiple libraries. In my particular case, you see me that I was building like all those widgets like from scratch, as opposed to bring in another library. Try as much as you can to build your own widgets, because it makes you learn. Only when you see that the widget is then too complex and it's taking you too much, then you bring an external like package. Why? Because then the more packages you bring, it's going to make your application like bloat, right? And be bigger. But if you build your own widgets, then you're only using the exact same widgets that are packed that come with Flutter, so you don't have to bring another library. And then that makes you learn and make your own library of widgets. That's what I do, and I make my own widgets. So it makes me learn every day, and my applications don't become like really big. But that's an amazing question. Where do I work? It's not a secret. I work for Philips. Philips is a medical company. They have their headquarters is in the Netherlands, but here in the United States, they have a couple of offices. I work off of the Cambridge office in Boston, and then I work in the medical field. Imagine this. So I'm in the medical field. I'm coding in Flutter. I'm doing, for example, like a backend in Python. I'm doing backend in like .NET, but the user interfaces that we build are like in Flutter. So I brought Flutter into my team, and my manager, that's what I said, like I became a Flutter full-time developer because I was so passionate about Flutter. So I brought Flutter into my company. I told my manager, do you want to hire 3 people, or you want to have just me? And I give you 3 applications with one single code base. So when I presented the case that Flutter, how compelling a Flutter was for building with one single code base 3 applications, they immediately went for it. They say, let's use Flutter. And then I became a full-time Flutter developer just by presenting it to my superiors. So I would advise the same thing to you. If you're working somewhere and then you just say, hey guys, do you want to build 3 apps, or and hire 3 people, or let's all learn one single language and build like 5 apps with one single code base, is a no-brainer. Like everybody would just say, yes, of course, I want to save money. So that's exactly what I did at Philips, and that's the reason why I became a Flutter, a Flutter full-time developer. And also, I became a GDE because I was doing that a lot and sharing with the community, just like you guys. Another question: how do you learn clean coding in Flutter and Dart? Is that the question? How to learn clean coding in Flutter and Dart? Well, the way that you do that, for example, in a couple of my code labs, I show clean architecture and how to develop clean code. And also the tips that I provide in some of the videos in my YouTube channel, I show you how to do clean code and clean architecture. But as in a nutshell, how to do clean code in Flutter and Dart, just one simple tip, something very small that it could go a long way. Make your build methods small. When you do, like when you make your build methods, like the way that we did it right here, like you see that this build method, when you build it, when you make it very big, your application performs not very well. Why? Because it has a lot of things to process. Another tip is to make your widgets the way that we did it. We make smaller widgets out of things. When you make smaller widgets and only every widget does like what it does best, and it only does one thing, you make it more performant so that only the updates are concentrated within a single widget. If you just do like one single widget for your whole application and everything inside the build method, every small change that you do rebuilds the whole application. Imagine just doing one single click and then the whole application rebuilding, and then you do another click and then the whole thing rebuilding. It's not efficient. So clean code means doing widget composition. Widget composition means separate your features into smaller widgets and the updates into smaller build methods. That way, when an update only performs, only that widget rebuilds, because that's how Flutter works. Flutter works by rebuilding your widget. So whenever you perform an update, instead of building the whole application, you only want to rebuild that single widget right there. So you concentrate it. You make your build method smaller, and then you concentrate your logic within a single build method, as opposed to making it really big. So that is just a simple tip on clean and clean architecture, cleaning, build Flutter applications in a clean manner. Another question says, yes, this is what happens if the back button is pressed after the MountsApp page loaded? Does it return to the splash page and is pushed in the stack? Very good question. In the Codelab, I continue showing how then when you go back to the splash page. Yes. The way to then make it so that it doesn't go back to the splash page is actually doing a replacement. Very good question. When you push things into the stack, into the navigator stack, it actually puts it right on top. So if you hit back, you get revealed with the splash page again. So the way to do so that the splash page gets removed and then another one just goes in, so you don't go back to the splash page, you do this. Let me show you. So when we do the navigation, instead of saying push, you say push replacement. Push replacement, what it does is, this is the splash screen. If I just don't want my users to go back to that, I want to push a replacement onto the stack. So you use push replacement so that you then push it, and then you don't have to click the back button. The back button then won't work because it doesn't have anything to go back to. That is a very good question. And if you continue on this Codelab and other Codelabs that I have on my site, you can definitely find all those tips. But great question and very good segue to what you're going to be encountering in some of those Codelabs. And we mentioned that. And it says, and get paid for 3 times. Okay, that's. Oh, I didn't read that. Now I read that. Yes, you get paid 3 times because you're building 3 applications. You become, no, truly, you become a commodity in the industry. If you say, I'm a Flutter developer, I can give you 4 applications: mobile, Android, iOS, web, Windows, Mac OS, and then you throw in embedded, let's say you want to build like a kiosk application or something for like a, like a embedded device, you're a commodity. You say, hey, I should get 5 salaries because I'm building you 6 apps, 5 apps like that. So yes, get into Flutter, share with the community because that's what makes you learn. And if any of you is interested even in becoming a Google GDE like the way I am, you can do so. It's easy because it is only you being passionate about what you do and sharing with others. That's all it takes to become a Flutter GDE. You're passionate about Flutter or any Google related technologies, you can become a GDE by creating like YouTube videos if that's your thing, write blog posts about like something specific about Flutter, sharing with the community like the way I'm doing right now, and then that's it. That's how I became. But it's a journey, and you don't learn like over time, like like overnight. It's a journey, but you get there. There's no way that you won't get when you're a really passionate person and you love what you're doing and you share with others. Simple as that. Great. Yeah, you're welcome, guys. Thank you so much for all your questions. This was an amazing session. I love the fact that I think I even love the questions more than in any other session that I've been before, because you guys have asked me the right questions in this particular session. We went a little bit of through our codelabs. We coded a little bit. That was awesome. Please, I encourage you to continue in your Flutter journey. And I know that we're almost we're almost at time. I wanted to do the raffle on the 2 Flutter courses. Just if Asol allows me to take a minute now to do the raffle. Perfect. Let me do that. So let me see if you guys have signed up for. Let me just grab the. Let me just grab the form. Just give me 1 second. And again, guys, thank you so much for all your questions. You guys were amazing. I love the fact that you guys asked me all the questions and that we got to interact a little bit. That this is kind of like the kinds of experiences that I like to do with the community. Ask me a lot of questions. We do a little bit of coding. We do this interactive session. Great. So the way that I'm going to be doing the raffle is very simple. So I'm going to be using something called the wheel of names. So I'll do the wheel of names, and then I just drop all your names in there. And then I will be raffling 2 Flutter courses on, let me just do this. There we go. So I'm going to be, and let me show you what the course is. So if you go to Udemy, there is a Flutter course, introductory Flutter course that I've even given to other people. It's called, Flutter Introduction. And is given by this guy, this Flutter and Dart, the complete guide 2022. This is the Flutter course that I'll be giving to 2 of the lucky winners today. So I'll be, that's why I need your email. I'll be sending it to you. It has a lot of things about the most recent things on Flutter. It gives you, again, all the types of developments for how to set it up, how to install it on your machine, and all of that. So let me spin the wheel and good luck to everybody. I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for the invitation. Please follow me on Twitter @drcoders so that you can see all the events that are happening this month and in the next, actually in the next month, because this one is almost over. And then you can do, you can even attend some of those events where I'll also be doing some raffles. I'll also be doing more Flutter, and they're all free, and you can just join those online events. So good luck to everybody. 2 Flutter courses from Udemy. Let's see who's the first lucky winner. Great. Azizulo, I think I got your name right. I'm sorry. If not, anyway, you are a winner. So congratulations. I will be sending you your Flutter course from Udemy. So thank you very much for joining. And now the second one. Let's spin it, and good luck to everybody again. Let's see who's gonna get it. Ooh, that was close. Look at that. Nail, I hope I got your name right. Congratulations. There you go. So now those were the 2 Flutter courses. You're gonna be getting those in your email shortly. let me just get back to the presentation just real quick, so I can put I could just put some of my contacts in there just so you guys can see it. So again, thank you so much. These are my social media channels, so you guys can follow me there. You know, my YouTube, you can continue watching more of my Flutter videos. On my portfolio side, you can check out some of the applications that I've built. Follow me at DR Coders, and I hope that I can see you soon. Thank you so much for the invitation. This was a pleasure. This was amazing. Love the questions, love the interactions. And thank you, Asol, for the invitation. You were the one who reached out to me. So kudos to you. Keep doing that. And I hope that other GDEs also, can come and give you guys these type of sessions for you. So any other questions before we part? But this was amazing, guys. That's all I can say.
Yes, I have a lot of questions.
Go ahead.
So
Yes.
first of all, thank you again for the presentation. And I was also surprised by the amount of interaction and questions from people in the chat. It's just 6 questions that are some sort of funny, some fun questions. And I think a lot of people enjoy when questions are simple, funny. It's just fun to listen to. All right, so the first question is, what is your secret code pet peeve that does not really matter but drives you crazy?
How could I say it? Well, I have a bunch. I mean, how could I answer that one? I mean, it's so many. Look, in my daily life, for example, like in my daily work, like it's so many things that like really get me. But what I try to do is, try to make the best out of let's say the situation. I code every day. I code even outside of work, and I even engage like in side projects and whatnot. That's the same thing that I advise to you guys. Like, if you're really passionate about coding the way that I do, you will do it like every time during the day. You will face things that may make you mad, or things that may like, oh, I get frustrated by something. But that is actually when you should be pushing harder, because that's what makes you learn more. Like, I code 8 hours a day in my job, but then right after I leave my work, I continue doing more coding. So that's my advice to you, for example, like in that particular case. Just keep pushing. If you're passionate about something, don't give up, and just follow your passion, because that's what actually is going to get you to where you want to go, pretty much.
Great. And what was something really hard for you to get when you were learning web development or mobile development, and what helped it click?
Great. That's a great question. For example, in that particular case, where I was doing web, it was mostly, for example, when at the beginning, even when I was doing like CSS, when I was trying to do like media queries and responsive design, that was a little bit tricky for me. But then when I got the hang of it, I used it everywhere. That's what I was doing, like web development. Also, like inspecting the DOM, some of those things that may seem like, oh yeah, like when you see me doing it right now, like, oh yeah, it's simple for you. But no, those are the things that really take practice, like how to do debugging on the web, and like inspecting the DOM, and even like manipulating things in real time. Those were things that were a little bit tricky for me at the beginning, but the more you do it, the more you get familiar with it. The same thing with Flutter right now. At the beginning, it was hard for me to grasp the concept of how Flutter worked and how it did like the rebuilding aspect of it. But once you get the hang of how Flutter works, how you give it a widget and then Flutter rebuilds it for you every time, how you compartmentalize your widgets to enhance the performance of your application and make your application perform better and look better at the same time, is something that you only get over time when you practice a lot. I keep saying build. You do get frustrated, you may get confused, you may get discouraged, but again, that is when you should keep pushing harder. For you guys learning Flutter right now, I should say, I encourage you, don't start with like state management. Learn the Flutter, like the layouts first, like build UI layouts first. Learn the inner workings of widgets and like the life cycles before you even get to something like state management, because you're going to get there eventually. So those are the things that initially got me like frustrated, but then at the end I'm like, okay, now I know how this works. Then I started cranking and building a bunch of apps. Once I saw that click, I'm like, wow, this is really easy, but you have to put in the work. That's what I say.
Great. And the very last question, not to keep you here because it's morning, it's Sunday.
That's fine, no problem. No.
That's actually my personal question. And I think on behalf of students, I can ask that question while we have that opportunity. So is it okay not to know what you want to specialize in software development as students? For example, I have my friend here, Camila Inchina. She's great. She wants to be a game developer, and that's just great. But for people who may not know what they want to specialize in, is that okay?
Oh, definitely, of course. And don't be discouraged. Even right now, you don't know, for example, like in which way you want to go in your development career. Because I started developing in Java, like at the beginning, like right out of college. I'm like, I want to be a back-end developer. But then when I started interacting with like the user interfaces, I never thought I would be a JavaScript developer or a web developer. As a Java developer initially, I said, I hate JavaScript. I don't like JavaScript. And then when I faced it for the first time, I'm like, this is amazing. Then I started hating JavaScript to loving JavaScript to death, building a bunch of web applications. So you see, I did not specialize in something from the beginning. Your development career is a journey, and you're going to find multiple things every year. Almost even a different framework comes out, and even different languages come in. So don't be discouraged. You got to be open to and adapt to changes. You got to be open to changes. So in my particular case, my journey has been all over the place. I've been back end, front end. Right now I'm more of a front end developer, but you see, I started as a back end. But it's not like I've completely forgotten about backend, because whenever you do a front-end application, you need a backend. So for those of you starting your development journey, and if you don't know where you're going, start with something that maybe at least you say, okay, I like this. Let me try to go in this particular route. But the knowledge in general, as far as like computer science and programming in general, they can cross over, because the knowledge that I learned in one particular language, I was able to apply them in another one. But at least even though the syntax is different, but at least I was able to apply that knowledge. It's not like I lost it completely, but at least I was able to adapt it. I've also developed games. I wanted to be a game developer. If you go to my to the app store, and you look for Roman Jaquez there, I have a bunch of games, and I wanted to be a game developer. But then I say, yeah, I want to be also in the business. I want to do like a line of business applications. So I stopped doing games for a little bit, and then I started doing business applications. Then like 2 years ago, like 3 years ago, I learned 3D modeling. Then I said, I want to be an augmented reality developer. You see, my journey takes me everywhere. Is what makes me happy, what makes me productive. That's what I do. And then in the industry changes so much nowadays that you may have to pivot at any point in your career, but it's all what makes you happy and what makes you productive. So don't feel discouraged that, oh, look, this guy is doing this and I'm doing that. No, does that make you happy? Does that make you productive? Continue on that path, as opposed to like try to find follow somebody else's journey that doesn't fulfill you. So for me to you, follow what you're passionate about. And if you encounter other things along the way, pick those up as well. Don't be afraid to say, oh, I don't like this, let me just drop it to pick something else. Don't be afraid of doing that. Like in my career, I've learned to do that many times along the way, and here I am, successful developer, a bunch of apps out there, and with a great community to share that knowledge with.
Yes, thank you. As a student, I'm very happy when I see my fellows who are super passionate about some sort of technology in software development. I'm always happy to listen to them, to see them, to hear them talk about what they're passionate about. So yeah, that's great. But just sometimes it feels strange being a software engineer student and learning about computer science and like not knowing what your passion is. So yeah, if you guys have, again, any questions, you can unmute. I think that will be much more helpful to directly interact with our speaker. But yeah, I just want to sum up and say that you're a great person. Even when I just emailed you, You're a great person. You were a great speaker and a mentor. The audience has been really amazing in terms of interaction, questions, and very respectful. That's also what I liked. And of course, Sardor, if you have anything to say, please do. And then we can finish.
Actually, I work as an Android engineer, but for the native side with the Kotlin. And I had a technical question, like we do the modular application, like we divide application into modules. And can you do that in the Flutter, like modularizing your application?
Yes, definitely. Yes. Some people think that you can't. It's just because they haven't been exposed a lot to Flutter. But in Flutter, you can modularize your application even into multiple sections, multiple modules, and then you can load them even like lazy load modules. The great thing about Flutter is that people may think that you cannot do it, but you could. You can also do, for example, like in Flutter, when you do like the state management, you can create services for each one. For example, you can follow the MVVM pattern, the same thing that you can do it like in Android. You can also add services in Android, the same thing you can do it in Flutter. You can do those state management packages and the state management strategies in Flutter. I've built like large applications and I've made them in a very modular fashion because that is the best way to do it. You don't want to throw everything in the same module and then you have like a disorganized code, you have spaghetti code, a bunch of like loosely components. You want to be able to do that as modules. I can share with you maybe a couple of my GitHub repos where I've developed a couple of applications and I've shown people how to modularize the applications better, how to compartmentalize the application to make it run efficiently. So yeah, you can check out my GitHub repo as well. I have a couple of applications in there, but yeah, you can definitely do that. And now you as an Android developer, I have a question for you. Do you you see now how the declarative programming is taking is really like very popular right now? You see Swift UI doing it declarative, you see Jetpack Compose doing it declarative, and you see Flutter also doing it declarative. Would you still do the XML, imperative approach in Android now that there is Jetpack Compose? What's your opinion on that?
I don't think so, because when the Kotlin came out, like almost all projects just gave up the Java. It's kind of a legacy right now. And I think the XML will also become a legacy thing. And the projects will try to eliminate the XML of.
There you go. That's perfect. That's an amazing answer. Yeah. And let me tell you something. I've also done already Kotlin and Jetpack Compose, and I love it. Like a couple of years ago, I did some Android using like imperative programming using the XML layout. And then when I got to Jetpack Compose, I'm like, this is amazing. But you see, Sardor, like the way that you answer right there, you answer like a GDE in Android. So I would recommend you again to continue down that path. You have great potential to become like a leader in your community, and I do commend you for also coming and joining forces with us all in this community and bringing your community along and showing them Android. That's amazing. Keep up the good work, man.
Yes, thank you, Roman. That was a very nice session, very good. I also like it the way you conduct the overall session.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we, I know if anybody has any questions, please let me know. But before we wrap up, I wanted to take like a screenshot picture with everybody. I don't know if anybody's comfortable opening your cameras so we can take like a group picture, if possible. Again, it's optional, but I like to show these, whenever I report the sessions that I have with the community and whatnot. If you guys want, again, otherwise, again, it's okay.
Yes, great.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. I appreciate everybody joining. I love your enthusiasm. I hope that we can see each other in the future. And I hope that, some of you continue your path in learning Flutter. Please reach out to me anytime via Twitter or LinkedIn or anywhere. Please, we can become friends. We can connect, because I like to expand my network of, friends and colleagues like you guys.
Thank you again, Roman. And I think we can wrap it up.
Great. So let's take a screenshot, but I also request from you guys, because you are a Google Student Developer Club and you're part of the Google Developer Club family, let's do the Google Developer Group signal, which is this, like this is the logo. Yeah, you can do that or you can do this. So let's all do the GDG logo signal like this. Oh, I need somebody to take the screenshot. Who's gonna do it? I need somebody to say, I can do this. No, you guys do it. And then I take the screenshot. So yes, just do this. This is the Google Developer Group logo signal. I promise not a gang signal. Just do this and then that's it. Yeah, just hold it like that. I'll take a screenshot. And perfect. Thank you guys so much. That was amazing. Thank you guys. I love the enthusiasm. I hope to see you soon, guys.
Thank you, Roman.
Take care.
Thank
We'll
you.
stay in touch.